talk about let and const, two new ways to declare variables in JavaScript. Now, back in the day, here's how we would normally declare a variable. We'd use the var keyword followed by the variable name and then assign a value to it. So if I did var x equals 10 and print that out, we can see that x is 10. Well, let and const work pretty much the same way. We just use those keywords instead, and everything else works as you would expect. If I had let y is 20 and const z is 30 and print all of those out, we could see var x is 10, let y is 20, and const z is 30. However, there are a few key differences. First and foremost, these variables are what we call block scoped, meaning they can only be accessed from the blocks in which they are defined in. The term blocks in this case refers to things like if statements or for loops or functions, etc. So for example, if we tried to access x in this scenario, you see we get an error. This is because x is only accessible within the if statement, the block that it was defined in. Or let's say we had a variable here called x and we set it to 10. Then let's say at some point in the code we introduce some logic that says if this block is true, then I want to create a new instance of the variable x, but this time I want its value to be 20. In this scenario, we wouldn't want our new instance of x to overwrite our global x variable. Well, thanks to block scoping, that isn't something we need to worry about anymore. As we can see, the x within the if block is 20, while the global x remains 10. If we were to change these lets to const instead, we get the same behavior, right? Because these are both block scoped. Let and const are both block scoped. We'll do const and we'll put the const variable in that if block. Now, when we print this out, we'll see that we get the exact same result, right? Block x is 20 while the global x is 10. On the other hand, if we were to change these const vars to, let's say, vars, right, we can see that we unintentionally update both the global x as well as the x in the if block. We'll put var in the if block, var at the global scope, and then print those out, and you can see that both of them become 20. And that is because var is not block scoped. So I know what you're probably wondering. If both let and const do the same thing, why would I use one over the other? Well, they do have a really important difference when it comes to what can or can't do with them. Let's start with let. Let is what we call a mutable variable, meaning you can change its value if you wanted to. So here we have defined x, but let's say somewhere along the way, we need to assign a new value to it. Well, we're allowed to do that. As long as x is within the scope, as long as x being redefined is within the scope that it was defined in. So here, right, this is within the scope, and we can see that the first x is 20, and then later along the way, I updated that x value to 5. However, if we were to try the same thing with const, we'll get an error. Here I have defined const, and then later along the way, I update the value of that const to 5. You see I get an error, right? Type error, assignment to constant variable. Const is short for constant, and as its name suggests, it's meant to be used on variables you never wish to change. But like most rules, there are some exceptions here. Although the constants themselves can never be updated, the properties within them can. So things like object properties and array elements are allowed to be changed or updated, even though they're constants. Let's say we have a person object and wanted to change the person's name from, let's say, John to Combo. We're allowed to do this by updating the object's name property directly because we aren't changing the person variable itself, just a property within it. So if we print this to the screen, we can see here that the original person object has a name value of John, but my updated person object worked, right? I was able to change that name to Combo because I'm not changing person, I'm changing a property within person. In summary, you can think of let and const as the upgraded var. They both contribute to providing better variable scoping and ultimately better variable control.